The mysterious, the macabre, the out of this world. The following are real people. They have real stories, and they've had real encounters. Here tonight on Newsworthy, two words and two question marks.
He's alive! Have you checked the children? Get out!
Tonight on Encounters, award winning author Angie Vancise steps into the shadows with us to explore a haunting beauty of grief, the secrets behind her suspenseful storytelling, and the unexpected ways her pets inspire her characters. From personal tragedy to literary triumph, this is a journey through mystery.
Angie, we're so excited to have you on tonight. Tell us a little bit about the things that you encountered beforehand that kind of led you to write this book.
Yes, well, too bad it wasn't a long show tonight because there's so many.
There might be more. Yeah, there might be another episode, right?
Yeah. Well, first off, I want to say thank you very much for having me. I love your show. I love the things you dive into and the stuff that you talk about.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. There's two stories kind of that came into one here. The first one is in 2012, I lost my brother. He was only 48. And a year and a half after that, my dad, and then a year after that, my mom. And so that was pretty tough. And my whole life, I'd wanted to be an author, but I had kept that secret to myself and told nobody. But after I lost everybody, because I only had the one brother, excuse me, I started to think, whoa, okay, what am I waiting for? Why am I not writing? So I went down a path and I wrote my first book, which was called Crive and Osprey. Excuse me. And that was sort of a semi-autobiography about my brother and about loss and that kind of thing. It wasn't really the genre I wanted to write in. I always wanted to write a mystery. But I contacted a medium to find out if my brother was okay. And she was actually the one that told me to write the book. I always wanted to write. And I was just like, what? I don't know what you're talking about. So after I'd finished Crive and Osprey, I thought, well, now Pandora's box has been open. I just want to keep writing. What do I want to write about? I don't know. So I called the same medium back, and she said, there's a sheriff in a small town, and I knew immediately what it was. My grandfather was a police officer of a town here called Wasaga Beach. It's actually the longest freshwater beach in the world. And that's our claim to fame. And he policed it. He was the police chief for many years. And it is a very small town. Well, when I was 9, I came across this photo of a woman standing next to a tiny box. And I thought, what's this? It was all in our family photos. So I ran to Papa and I said, who is this? What is this? And he said, I don't want to talk about it. And he stormed out of the room. Well, over the years, I'd thought about the photo, and when he passed away, I decided, I was with my Nana, and we were going through the photos, and I see this photo again, and I'm like, Nana, what is it with this photo? She said, I'm not sure. Your grandfather wouldn't talk about it. But it, now I recognize that tiny box was actually a coffin, and I assumed it was the mom standing beside it. So my Nana told me some pretty gory detail about what had happened, using knitting needles. That's all I'll say. But she said, I don't know if that actually happened, because your grandfather, when he didn't want to talk about something, he'd throw the worst thing out there so you wouldn't want to talk about it anymore. So I said, it's that photo. I need to write about the photo. And she said, you are going to do so much research. And I'm thinking, this is a photo from 1933 in this small, remote, way up north town. How much research can I do? Well, I'll tell you, I was at that computer and in libraries and whatever for a good 6 months. And it wasn't anything to do with that case. That was his first case as a police officer.
Oh
It
wow.
it took me down this whole rabbit hole of child trafficking and um, horrific things that happen. And one of the interesting things is, I got into researching all of that and Masonic symbolism and everything. And just back in October, my mom's sister took me to the grave site where everybody is. And she said, "Oh, it's just so tacky." I said, "What?" She said, "My grandfather's gravestone has the Masonic symbol on it." And I was like, it has what now?" So we pull up and I'm looking and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, it does. It had the Masonic symbol. But here's the freaky bit. I should have brought a book in here, one of my books, but I use symbols on each chapter to kind of foreshadow what the chapter is going to be about. Every symbol on that gravestone, there was 4 symbols, is almost to a T what I used in my book. And I had no
Whoa.
idea
What is that
that
called? That's secret.
synchronicity.
Yeah, that's
Wow,
exactly
that's
what that
crazy.
is.
Yeah.
Shoot.
So anyway,
Wow.
that's the grief propelled me into the writing, and then the writing propelled me into that photograph, and then the photograph propelled me into all of this horrific thing. And what I did is I don't want to glorify it. I want to clarify that right now, because there's nothing to glorify in that world. What I want to do, my mission is to expose it and to give a voice to the kids that no longer have one, or the survivors. Because the most horrific thing that I came across was I would see this footage of these survivors talking about the hell that they literally went through, and the comments were awful. They were like, "This didn't happen to you. Why are you lying? Why are you making up
That's
stories? Why are
awful.
you terrible?" So that propelled me forward. And so in the book, I have 2 point of views, Evie and Charlie. Charlie Baker, oddly, was yelled to me in the middle of the night. By whom, I do not know.
Really?
I was laying there just as I started to go, okay, where am I taking this story? Why would my grandfather want to keep this photo if he didn't want to talk about it? Like, that was a big question I needed to answer. And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, I don't know what to do. So I go to bed and I wake up with this loud, "Charlie Baker." And I went, what the? So then it became the question, who is Charlie Baker? I asked it in the shower. I asked it at lunch. I asked it at dinner. I asked it every time I went to bed. Who is Charlie Baker? And sometimes I think I should have called the book that, to be honest, because that kind of is the theme of the whole book.
Oh
But the
wow.
Charlie Baker chapters are the most difficult to read in there. But there's only 7, and it is real testimonials from the survivors. That I didn't
Interesting.
make any of
Wow.
that up.
Well, I
Yeah.
can't wait to pick up the book, because that is such a when people in today's world, and we will definitely get deeper into this, but one of my big things is people. There are so many people that A, doesn't know that it's really going on,
Yeah.
or B, close a blind eye and say, "Oh, it's not happening in my small town," or they just don't believe that that's a thing. And
Yes.
it's in every single town in the United States and across the world. It's overwhelming. If you really get
It's
into it, it can very
bad.
rapidly overwhelm you.
Oh, 100%. And I really had to keep focusing the fact that I was writing for the kids. I'm writing for the kids. And the funny thing is, when my brother passed, one of his ex-partners, he was a gay man, and one of his ex-partners had had a dream. And my brother didn't wake up one day, but he was still breathing. He was 48. And so the next 4 days were literally horrific, because we had to make the decision after the 4 days to let him go. But in those 4 days, he had this dream, and he saw my brother standing at this fence that was like he said he called it like an airport security. And my brother had said he had decided he was going to stay, but then he realized he was shown what he had to do on the other side, and he had to go because it involved things that he couldn't tell us yet. And it worked with what had happened, because on the second day he responded to some things the neurologist did, but then the third day he didn't. So it kind of fell in line with that dream. Well, then years later, after the book was finished, I was getting a reflexology done, and she takes you through this meditation. And in the meditation, I all of a sudden was in the middle of a forest, and my brother appeared, and I was like, oh, and this is weird. What's happening? He said, and I hadn't written for a while because that was pretty heavy, and I started to get those doubts, like, oh, I'm not good enough of an author to do this. All those nasty things that come up in your head. And he said, you have to do this work. He said, I had to do it here, you have to do it there. And he literally stood, moved aside, and behind him was all this forest. And the minute he stepped aside, thousands of children stepped forward. I couldn't see past them. There was so many.
Wow.
And he said, I'm doing my work here, you have to do your work there.
Well,
And
Wow.
yeah,
So
yeah.
let me ask you a question, and this is going to sound, and I ask this because this is, I guess I really want to know how you get through such a dark thing that you have to do. You mentioned your pets and how they help keep you grounded. Have any of their quirks or personalities made it into your characters, your scenes of any of your writings? Do you use them to? Because when I've had a really bad day, nothing cheers me faster than my pets. Nothing says,
100%.
"Hey, you're home, you're okay, and everything's good," and they're excited to see you, even if you go outside and come right back in. Did they help
Yes.
with this? Because this is heavy stuff.
Oh yeah, they sure did. They would come up, and yes, I would say that yes, their personalities have made it in. And actually, years ago, I had a cat named Wilbur, and he was, when through your life you get one or two of those animals that are just your soulmate, right? They're just that. That's what Wilbur was to me. And I was always called Fern out of, what's the book, with Wilbur. And, Charlotte's Web.
Charlotte's Web.
Charles Webb, yeah.
Yeah. So I was always Fern to my papa because he was a pig farmer, and I would always freak out when the pigs were being taken. So Angie wasn't allowed on the farm on Thursday. That's when that truck would come. So that's why I named him Wilbur. Well, he's actually a full-on character in Hidden in the Shadows, and he's a very, very important part. He actually ends up helping to solve part of the crime that's going on. So yes, very much they appear either as in personality or physically there, for sure.
The only bad thing about pets is they don't last long enough.
I know.
You talk about soulmates, and Brett knows Harold Jean was definitely mine.
Oh,
Yeah.
And he was such a good dog. He's been gone a couple of years now. Well, right before we got Sketty. So, but yeah, I understand that feeling.
yeah.
So I want to go back what you said earlier. So when you talked about how you went to see a medium, so did you know somebody who had seen a medium that it had been helped from that, or was that your first time going to a medium? Because I know it, just in my experience, I don't know a lot of people who go that route, if that makes
Right.
sense.
Yeah, I had my whole life gone, the first encounter with a medium, I think I was 9 or something. We were at
Oh, wow.
we have this big GNE, it's called here. It's called the X, actually, in Toronto. And my uncle would take us there, and there was these tents, and he said, "Oh, go in the tent." And this woman was really freaky, and I felt really weird, like there was something there for sure. And she told me that I would only live to be in my 40s, that I would die of a heart attack or some kind of something.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, at 9, I was like, oh, well, that's cool.
Yeah, I'm just going to stress about
Well, it's
that.
good you
the
have
rest of
20
my
years
life.
left. So
Right. But here's the thing. That did happen, but it happened to my brother,
Oh,
which is what the weirdest thing is.
Wow,
Right?
yeah.
oh.
So I've had a lot of encounters. My daughter has been very intuitive her whole life. She's 28 now. But this particular one was referred to me. I was helping a friend of mine who owned a magazine. She was doing shoots for clothing and stuff. So she asked if I would be the model for that. I said, sure. And so she told me about this. Her name's Deborah Johnson. She lives in a town 40 minutes from here. And when my brother died, I just really felt like I needed to hear from him because he didn't want to die. and the guilt I was feeling because he'd been sick for a year. He had pressure in the back of his head. None of us knew what was going on. So there was a lot of guilt there and a lot of pain. And I just needed to hear from him. So that was the original reason to call her. And she told me that he was there and that he said it was his own fault. And I did find out after that he had been doing some cocaine parties, and it caused plaque where the two veins in the back meet, and the plaque dislodged and blocked everything from going in. So he said, don't feel guilty. It was my fault. It was something I was doing, something I took. But it was shortly thereafter that she said, my grandmother was there and that she had told her that I was only using 40% of my talents because I do visual art as well. But I said, well, I don't understand. And then that's when she said the book you've always wanted to write. And then, of course, I leave the meeting going, now who's going to believe me that I always wanted to write a book, right? Now they're going to say,
Right.
oh, the medium told you that now. But I had secretly taken courses. So I did have little short stories and things I had been writing. So I did have some proof. But
No,
nobody did that. But
even if even if that was the reason. So,
yeah. Right?
Yeah. I mean, just
Go for it.
because the guy who invented Smucker's peanut butter, I'm pretty sure that he's not, however he got the idea, he'd be okay with it.
Yeah.
Wow.
True. Yeah. Yeah. So that's why I contacted her. And then I actually met a medium in Mexico. And this is where the story gets kind of strange. I don't know whether you can see this, probably. This little, well, my family are in there, the ashes. And we were playing volleyball. And after I wrote Cry of an Osprey, the first book, ospreys would appear over top of the volleyball net or whatever. Like, It was just the weirdest thing. And so this particular day, I was on the volleyball court and one of our players had left. I love beach volleyball. And it's the only time I get to play it because I live in Canada. So, I mean, we have it in the summer, but anyway, so then this one guy that was playing with us, he said, well, I'll get my wife. So she came over, and the minute she got on the court, I looked back and I almost said, oh, there you are. And I was like, what is that? That's weird. I'm not saying that. So then after the game was over, I had said to my husband at the time, I said, I feel like I know her. So later on that day, we went down to the beach, down to the water, and she came up. And she said, you know what drove me over? And I said, what? She said, your necklace. And I went, pardon? And she said, that necklace. And I said, that's weird. I said, because my family's ashes are in here. And she said, well, I'll tell you why. And she turned around. She said, my birthday is 0808. And in 08, I had this done. And she turned around, and you would have swore this was on her shoulder.
Ooh.
It was exactly the same.
Ooh.
Exactly the same.
Cold chills all over me.
I know. I was just like, what the heck? What is that? And then I confessed then to her that I had this, oh, there you are, feeling. So we started to talk more and more that week, and we realized that we were supposed to meet. And she helped me so much with Hidden in the Shadows. I would be given those words in the middle of the night, like Charlie Baker, and then I would give them to her, and then she would get what she calls this download. And then it would all come in. And then the next day, I swear to God, I would open up Facebook or go to do some more research, and boom, whatever we had just discussed the night before would be right there in a video or in something. Like there were so many weird situations like that. It was just really strange. So mediums for me have been the real deal. There are some, people just wanting to make a bunch of money out there that aren't real, but.
Right.
Well, yeah, and I hope to have her on the show. Just she's battling some health issues right now, but I have an aunt that is very sensitive, and I've said many times on the show that, and I always use the example. I used to do retail management 100 years ago. I was in Ohio and went home for some sort of holiday where you eat. I don't remember which one it was, but I walked in and she's like, when are you going to tell us? And I'm like, tell you what? And she's like, that you're moving out west and just leaving us all. And I'm like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm still stuck in middle of nowhere, Ohio. And that was over the weekend. On Monday, I went back to work, and my boss was like, I got good news and bad news. The bad news is you're moving. The good news is you're going to be the longest moved employee of all time in our company. They moved me from Ohio all the way to Salmon, Idaho.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I was like, oh, okay.
Oh.
And then on all of my children, she knew what they were. She wouldn't tell me, but she's like, before I knew that there was even a child coming, she'd be like, "Oh, got another bun in the oven." I'm like, "You need to stop saying that because I had too many kids." But yeah, very sensitive. Uh, Probably could have been amazing had she had the opportunity for training and to get with a
Yes.
mentor to help her with that.
Yeah.
But even as a novice, was
Very
crazy.
powerful.
Very, very.
That's like my daughter. Same thing. At 5, I came to pick her up at school, and she was in the back seat, and she said, "Mom, what connects people?" I'm like, "Pardon? You're 5. I don't know what you mean." And she goes, "Well, connects people." And I said, "Well, sometimes you just feel good around people, and sometimes you don't." And she said, "No, you're wrong." And I was like, "Oh God."
Okay.
Okay, all right.
As every
So
5-year-old does.
right. I said, "Well, what connects people?" And she said, "Well, there's a bubble around people." And I said, "Really?" And I said, "Are they different colors?" She said, "Yeah, there's like red ones and purple ones and yellow and blue and green and lots of colors, and they change." And I said, "So is a purple bubble connected to another purple bubble?" She goes, "I don't know yet." I said, "Okay." So then the next day I picked her up, and she said, "Mom, remember yesterday about the bubbles?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "I was wrong." And I said, "You were wrong." She goes, "No, no, no, there's still bubbles, but there's a line between the bubbles that connects people." And I said, "Wow." I said, "Don't you ever forget that. Don't you ever, ever forget that image." And years later, I don't know, something on Facebook showed up, and that exact image that she told me about was right there. And so I sent it to her, and I said,
Wow.
"This is what you described." Yeah,
Oof.
yeah,
So, speaking of described, you have described yourself as a visual artist.
yes.
How does your background in visual art influence your writing? Do you like see the scenes in your head before you write them, or is it the opposite?
No, totally, 100%. I see it as a movie, and I feel like because I'm a visual artist, the descriptions are a little bit more visual. My work has been called very atmospheric, and I think that's why. Because the visual art, I can describe a scene. I'm very visual. I see everything before it happens. The whole scene will be played out as a movie in my head. And
Nice.
the characters, for instance, remember I said that question of why would my grandfather keep this photo if he didn't want to talk about it? That was a huge question I needed to answer for the readers. Even though I don't know the answer, I had to have that. And I thought, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to write and write and write. And I was sitting at the computer, and I was writing a confession letter from the fictional partner of Evie, because Evie finds the photo the same way, and she goes after where like the answers. So she goes to talk to his former officer, his former partner, and this former partner wrote a confession letter, and it was in that confession letter that the answer to that question came out. And I typed it, and I literally threw my chair back and went, "What? Shut up! That's why."
Wow.
Yeah,
That's insane.
yeah,
So, you talk about your grandfather and his letter. I have to share this story, and I shared it several times at the festival last week. But um, the older generation will often hold things and harbor things.
yeah.
Um, 2 years last year, not this year, but last year at the Hocking Hills Bigfoot Festival, I had this little 82-year-old woman, pretty good shape, had our sign out, and our sign simply says, "Tell us your story." That's all it says.
Yeah.
And she walked past and she saw it. She kind of humphed and walked away.
Oh,
And then we were downtown, but she comes back, she sees the sign again, she stops, she humps, and she walks away.
oh,
So the third time she walks past, the third time on the same street. So she stops again and I catch her. I'm like, "You got something you want to get off your chest," she said. "Do you record it?" I said, "I don't have to. This can just between me and you." She goes,
yeah.
"Fine." When I was 17, 18, whenever it was, she didn't remember. She's 82. Who remembers at that point?
Right.
I had just got my license, and I was on my very first drive by myself. And I come over this hill, and she gave the road name. I'm not from the area, recognize the road. And at the bottom of the hill was this triangle craft, and it had 5 lights on it. And as soon as I put my car in park, it shot a light up at me
Oh,
and started hovering 20 feet off the ground and then took off.
oh God.
She said, and then as soon as she was done, she says, I've carried that story and told no one for 60 or 70 years.
Wow.
And I'm like, she goes, that just feels like a huge relief off of my shoulders.
Wow.
I mean, it was just their generation. They just, if they thought it was going to bring some sort of embarrassment or negative to their family name, they weren't giving it out, period.
Oh,
You know,
no.
that wasn't in the cards. So
No.
that's crazy.
Speaking of that, have you had any sort of feedback from readers that have had some of this trauma happen to them or anything like that?
Not yet. I did get in touch with one. Her name is Annika Lucas, and actually, there is a scene in my book from her horrific time that she had one episode that she described. I did message her one time, and I just said, I'm thanking you for being so brave about talking about this, because a lot of the people that talk about it, they commit suicide, right?
Yeah.
Which they don't, but that's what they say. So I said, for her to give what she's been giving, that's crazy. So she did actually send me messages back and told me the same thing, that thank you for writing about it, thank you for giving our voices, da da da. So, but I have said in many incidences that I'd like more to come if they need to,
Right.
I would love to hear from them, or at least just get some more information if they want their story told from a fiction point of view,
Right.
It's really the only way that you can do this through fiction. I'm just doing what they do because they tell truth through fiction all the time.
Right.
It's always right in our face. So I'm throwing it back in theirs, if you will.
Absolutely. And I think that's wonderful. So, probably my last question, because I know you got to go. It's a Monday and everybody's tired. Seems to be mysteries, thrillers are your passion genres. What draws you to that suspense, and how do you balance that tension with your emotion and the emotional depth?
Sorry, I just saw something come through, and could you say that again? I zoned out there for a minute.
That's all right. If that were against the law, I'd be in prison forever. I said mysteries and thrillers are kind of like your passion. That you really, your passion comes through in those genres.
Yeah.
What draws you to that suspense, and how do you balance it with the emotional attachment that goes with it?
That's a very good question. I, even from a small child, loved suspense, thriller, true crime. I always said it was because of my papa being a police officer. In fact, I wanted to be a detective at one point, and he said, no, don't get into it. I think I balance it with just taking care of me, making sure that I get out in nature, making sure that my animals, there's one laying on the bed right now, like just cuddling them and putting my energy into the kids. The kids really motivate me mostly. Just their voices and knowing what a lot of them had to endure. And the survivors, I don't know who's better off, the ones that get killed or the ones that stay alive. Because the ones that stay alive are haunted by it all the time. And I just really wanted to give a voice to them. And there's a very important notice in the front of my book that I encourage anybody who picks it up to read, because there could be trigger warnings.
Sure. And just speaking of the book, tell us the name of the book, where you can get it.
Sure.
We'd love to be able to put that out for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's called Hidden in the Shadows, and I use a pseudonym. It's just my initials, A.D. Vancise. They can get it on my website, which is advanciseauthor.com, or you can order it off Amazon as well. It's all
Is it
there.
available in audiobook?
Yes.
Perfect.
Oh,
'Cause that's
awesome.
how me and Brent read most books.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. It's available on audiobook. Yeah.
Angie, we absolutely appreciate you taking time with us today. We want to get into that deeper topic, and we'll get that scheduled and on the books
Sounds
just as soon as
great.
we can, because that is a topic that needs to be there. If we did it every week, it wouldn't be enough, to be
Yeah,
honest.
I agree.
So again, thank you very much for being here, and we appreciate you so much.
Well,
Yeah,
thank
thank
you
you.
guys. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it too. I love your podcast. I just love it.
Oh,
Yeah, I really do.
today's episode brought to you by our great sponsors, Ed Locke at USA Mortgage and Smoking Gun Jerky of Lincoln, Nebraska. Use code CRYPTID10 for a great discount. And Jerry, if you can't see the light,
Be the light.
perfect.